Hi everyone. Let me start sharing my screen. Well, hopefully you can all see that now. So this evening I'm going to try and do an introduction to version control, Git and GitHub. Hopefully you all have access to a GitHub account on your laptops. There'll be some bits during this session that we'll be starting and creating our own repositories and doing a bit of pushing and pulling. So try to follow along if you can, and please at any point if you have any questions, you want me to go over anything, you need a concept that isn't quite making sense, do put your hand up or unmute yourselves. I'm happy to answer things as we go along. So I just want to start by saying that Git is an incredibly powerful tool. It is a little bit intimidating, it's very complicated, but it's a really, really, really worthwhile thing to study and understand. Even just the fundamentals will get you a long way. So GitHub is separate to Git, and it's Git is the language and GitHub is the open software repository landscape. So it's a Microsoft product that is used to share your projects. And so to get the best out of it, you don't need to understand absolutely everything to its core, but there are some fundamental things we're going to cover today, which will be super helpful in getting you using it. A little bit of an introduction to me. I'm Jessie. I'm part of the Coding Black Females team. I'm a software engineer at SciSafe, and I have a podcast with my co-host Amber where we speak to different women in software engineering roles. So yeah, I'm also somebody that's come from a non-traditional background. I didn't study computer science. I came in through customer success and learned to code on the side, and found the codebar community and workshops and sessions really helpful myself. So super excited to be able to do sessions with them now, having gone through the journey using these sessions before. So yeah, got some goals for the end of the workshop, and those are to have an understanding of version control and what it is, why we need it, an introduction to some of the Git commands and how to use them. And we will be, like I said before, creating our own repository, pushing and pulling between a shared repository, and understanding how to resolve merge conflicts. If we get to it, hopefully we can all start to improve our GitHub profiles by the end as well. But the main aim here is for you to feel empowered to handle any Git errors that you encounter in the future. There's one thing that I'd like you to walk away from this session with. It's just that little bit more confidence in using Git and GitHub in your journey. So I'm going to go right back to the basics, and I want to talk about how it can be quite tempting, especially if you want to get good at something fast, to take some shortcuts and skip the basics and skip some key concepts. So I want to make sure that we're starting from the beginning and we're all getting as much of grip as possible on those basics. So if you feel like I'm going too slow, please do call it out. But I'm also hoping that we can get the practice in and build some solid foundations and commit these steps to memory. So with why we use Git is you will have seen or had the experience of sharing files with each other on possibly at university or at work or at school, where you have to kind of email files back and forth. And you've got those moments where, I'm just going to name people to the waiting room. You've got those moments where you've got somebody emailing you with final version v2, final version v3, actual final version. And you can see that it's a really, really tricky way to keep track of what version you need, and also collaborating with people so that you're not overwriting each other's versions. And so that's where Git comes in. So with Google Docs, you've got the ease that everything's being saved as you go. It's kind of, as long as you're connected to the internet, everything is saved, every change you make. And the difference here with Git is that it's a lot more work to save and share your work, but that is a good thing ultimately, because what you're doing with Git is you're specifying which files you want to include in a save or commit, and you're naming this commit as well. So the actual file that you're saving and the changes you're making have a commit message. And in that process, you're finalizing which bits of those changes you want to keep. And then you have to back up that save by sending it to GitHub, and then it's stored on there. So all of these things give you a much better way to undo the changes you make. So you can't, well, you could in theory, but it's a lot harder to accidentally save a file that you didn't mean to with half-finished changes. Whereas with Google Docs, if you're saving automatically at intervals, you could create some really cluttered edit histories, and it would be tough to find and work back to the ways that where you had your versions of working code. You also have a much better way to collaborate with people rather than sending these files back and forth. So the fact that you're naming the change, the fact that you have it like printed with a specific moment in time, all of those things are contributing to it being so much easier to browse the history and understand what changed when with very specific timestamps. And then also, it is a better way to share your code with the rest of the world. So one of the fantastic things about GitHub is if you're pushing your code up there, it means your side project, as well as always being in 2 places. It's not just on your laptop, it's in the cloud. You also have the ability to share that with anybody who wants to come and look at your profile, which is a super helpful thing to do if you're looking for that engineering role. So yeah, this is Git. It tracks collaborative work on projects through a beautiful distributed graph theory tree model. Cool, how do we use it? No idea, just memorize these commands and type them up. Type them to sync it up. If you get errors, save your work elsewhere, delete the project and download a fresh copy. So yeah, I just think it's a funny meme because it is true. It can be sometimes a little bit intimidating how the changes happen and how things cannot go as you planned. But I want to show you the ways that we can avoid you having to do these steps. Oh, Kim, I just saw your comment. I used to copy a new version of my code into Dropbox at the end of every day before I knew about Git. Exactly. Shouldn't need to do that. I definitely have had that too. So again, some more benefits of Git and GitHub. Every copy of a Git repository has a full backup of a project and its history. So you can see every single time somebody has made a change to that project and what those changes were with all the saved messages. So there are only a few easy to remember commands that are all you need for most day-to-day version control tasks. And then GitHub is a hosting service that provides that web-based collaboration service for free and to the world, and is, once you get the fundamentals, really easy to use as a skill that you'll probably use in a few different roles across different organizations. So I'm going to move into what some Git terminology and what some of these things are. Again, shout out questions and add comments if you want me to go over anything. But so a repository is a history of your project's commits. So you can see it's a collection of code and you can see what was added by who and when. And all of these files are in the same place. So that's what we would refer to the final source of truth instead of having all these different versions. Yes, Mary, I get confused with the Git tree, branches, etc. We're going to cover all of that, so no stress. What is a commit? So you heard about commit messages. It's the recorded set of changes in your project's files. Every time you want to add your changes to the repository, you need to commit these messages. And a commit will create a record of the changes you've made, which can then be reviewed, approved, and merged into that main version of your repository. So yeah, I think, again, this is a really important one to remember, is that there aren't necessarily rules for the best point in time to decide when you want to commit. A lot of people have a lot of different guidance on when something is like enough of a change to make that commit, but ultimately it's a very personal choice. I like to do it whenever I've got like written something that's a functioning and working piece of code, like as you would have with a document. When you've written a paragraph that you're happy with, it's a good time to make a change, to save the change, sorry. So generally that's how you might want to write a commit message and when you might want to commit. So this is a tree of kind of the steps in saving your work with Git and version control. So you can see that you can move between staging something and adding, when you've got your working directory, so your version down here, you add the files to be staged. So they're on the stage, they're about to be committed. And that's you basically picking the things out of all of the changes you've made that you actually want to save. So some of the things you might not want to save. Sometimes you do want to save everything, but you essentially pick those things and put them to the stage. And then you write your commit message and then that is saved in Git history forever if you push it up. You can also move backwards through those stages, so you can Git reset, and that will bring the things back to the stage before you push them. And then you could also do the same again and check out and move back to an earlier version of those changes. Again, Git and GitHub are not the same thing. So Git is the open source version control tool, and GitHub is a company that hosts Git repositories in the web and provides a web interface to interact with those repos, shortened for repositories, that they host. So I'm going to move on to commands now, but does anybody have any questions at this stage? Jen said, I find Git and GitHub very simple, yet complicated. When you look at it, it looks simple, but it's not. Maybe I feel that way because Git makes me nervous, even though I enjoy coding in general. I definitely get the nerves in the first few times. I think hopefully one of the things we'll do today is just kind of like moving through these steps a few times so that they become a little less scary every time. And over time, those nerves will go. But I get it. It's a little bit scary when you make some changes and you're not sure. But hopefully we'll cover that today, Jen. And staging is the git add, correct? Yes. So when you do git add, the command we'll go over in a sec. That's you adding it to the stage, exactly. So commands you need to know, git add. What this does is it copies the files in their current state and moves them to the stage. So here you would specify what those files are, and we'll do this in a moment with some of the files that we'll be creating. We then have git commit, and that is saving a snapshot of those changes that you've staged as a commit. And so essentially you're bulk grouping all those changes that are on the stage to say, these are the things that I'm ready to push up. And so with this, you've got a commit message at the time of a commit, and they don't need to be paragraphs, although some organizations want them more detailed than others, but you want it to be enough to know what these changes include. You want to communicate the meaning, but not necessarily tell the whole story. And so this can be really helpful for yourself as well when you're looking back at different things that you've committed to know exactly at what stage you added a specific part. GitHub Desktop is really useful. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the user interface, isn't it? And you're using Git Kraken, so you can see where your branch is compared to main, because sometimes you might be behind master or ahead. Yeah, visual tools like that can be super helpful, especially when you're first getting to grips with the concepts. Just trying to figure out where you are in relation to the main branch of the repository can be super tricky to start with. And then also to continue, like I know a lot of senior engineers that still use that, so it's not it's just a personal preference thing. And then there is git reset. So what that does is it unstages files, it copies the files from the latest commit and puts them back to the stage. So you want to use this as an undo to undo the files that you've added. And you can also do just git reset to unstage absolutely everything if you don't specify a file. So I don't know why this slide looks like that, but there is a challenge with where to create repositories. And I think this is a link to, or it was supposed to be a link to something, but basically we can go through this in a bit when we make our own, but the .git folder contains the entire Git repository and all the history. And so if you delete this folder in your file structure in your project, it deletes the Git init, so it undoes you initializing a Git repository. So if you do initialize a Git repository somewhere that you shouldn't, like on your desktop or in any folder with containing documents that you don't necessarily want to push up to GitHub, you can just delete the .git folder, and that will undo that initialization of a repository. So yeah, on Mac it can be hidden. So sometimes you have to right click and show hidden files, because you're right, that's a really good point, Vicky. Yeah. So things to look out for. The most common mistake is pushing before pulling, and I believe this is what was just mentioned a moment ago. If you pull afterwards, you could get a conflict. And a conflict is essentially when you you've made a change to something, but the version of the project that you have has since changed from the main branch, and somebody else has made a change in a similar place. And Git does its best job to figure out how to merge those two things. But sometimes if the changes are on the same line or they're touching the same parts of code, you'll need to fix the conflict before you're able to merge. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. But first, let's give it a go. If you can go into, oh cool, thanks Mary, Command and H to show your hidden files. If you can go into a folder that you keep your code in, or if you don't have one, just make a new folder in your desktop, however you'd like, and just create a folder called codebar. So right now we're gonna connect to GitHub in two different ways. I'm going to show you the two different ways you can initialize a repository. And the first way we're going to do it is by starting with a initialization locally. So you might not be familiar with this way, and that's fine. We'll do it the other way in a moment. This is just to give you an exposure to both ways. So once you're done, you should be able to create a file inside the folder, and we'll just call it readme.md, and that's markdown. Doesn't have to have anything in it. This is just to demonstrate the concept of like being able to push files up and create a repository. If you want to give me like a thumbs up or done in the chat when you're done. Sweet. We're not on GitHub just yet. We're just on our local computers, just opening a file in our local computer. We'll go to GitHub in a second. I think you should just be able to right-click in your folder. You can open, if you want, you can open an IDE, and so you could open an IDE to view or create a file, but you don't need to do it in any specific program just yet. Yeah, if you've got VS Code or if you've got PyCharm or anything. Yeah, Atom's good one. Awesome. So now if you can open up your terminal, and again, you can do this inside your IDE, and I'll wait on this step for a couple of minutes. I don't want to rush ahead in case anybody's not done. If you can open up your terminal, and then we will start to do some commands. So if you have already connected to your GitHub as well from your terminal, you shouldn't need to do this part. But if you haven't, you'll just need to do git config -- global. And what that's doing is it's connecting your account globally to GitHub and to your local machine. And then whatever your GitHub username is. Or if you don't know your username, you can use your email instead. So you can see in the screenshot, the person's done it with both versions. Rosa, the file was just called readme.md, but you can call it whatever you like. It's just typically it's like one of the first things you would have in a repository, because it's basically it would be the set of instructions that you would want someone to read first when they first look at your project. Is it command prompt we use? You could, I think, Jen, do you have an ID? Do you have like VS Code or? Okay, cool. You found the terminal. Cool. Again, let me know if you're done. So Jen, you don't have to, but if you're in, if you open up VS Code, you should be able to get the terminal from there. And it's, some people prefer to use the one that's in VS Code. Some people prefer to use, yeah, the like default machine one, but they're both the same. Yeah, Mary, in VS Code, you can right click on the file name and open the terminal. It's just a little bit easier to navigate and visually see where you're at if you do it from the same place. Yes, your username should be the name that you've got on your GitHub, yeah. So why not? I love GitHub too. If you don't know your username though, you can use your email. So whichever one you've got to hand.
Sorry, hi. So I just done my name because I haven't used Git in a long time. As you can see, I have stayed away from it for quite some time. Is mine looking fine? Because is all those things supposed to turn up, like all these different texts after typing my name?
Yeah, if they're not error messages, it should be a good sign that you're on the right track. Is there anything at the bottom of those messages that says you need to do anything else?
It just says, like, at the top, it just obviously says home, so on and so forth. And it goes error, unknown option, general code, and then there's like, it's tell me what I can use. I see. Ah, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm just doing my email now.
Okay.
Do I just put like my email, and then?
Yeah, so if you do git config -- global space user dot email and then put in your email inside quotes.
Oh, I don't know if I've added global to my username. Sorry, I don't mean to waste time.
No, don't worry at all. Let me copy and paste the command in here. So then
Because I don't know if I added the global next to my name. I don't. Is the screen supposed to? Can I just share screen quickly? Is my screen supposed to like have all these different codes? Or supposed to be empty? I'm just wondering.
yeah, do you want to share your screen?
Okay, because mine is yeah, so it looks a bit like this because I mean, you can see that I've like obviously is it because I haven't typed in global? Maybe because I forgot to add global
So
into
if
it.
you go to the chat, I've just put in the command you need to use. And then if you inside the quotes where I've put email here, if you can put your email in there in that part.
Okay. How do I start from scratch? I remember my tutor used to do it at a boot camp. Like you can like remove everything and can start again. I remember there's a command for it, but I have forgotten. Okay, let me just check. Let me just stop sharing.
Cool. And Kimberly just put an example of her doing it there in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you.
You copy it, yeah, that would probably be the better one.
To do my name again, or is that fine?
It's fine because nothing happened when you did that.
Oh, so I can start the terminal again. Ah, okay, yeah, I'll try it again. I'll start again and see what happens. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome, Ikram. If you type in git config user.name, it will show you your name if you've done it, if it's worked. But you shouldn't need to reopen the terminal. You can continue in the same terminal you're in. How's everybody else getting on? Sin, what happens if you do it inside your terminal? You're saying it does nothing. Can you share your screen or?
Hi, yeah, I'm really confused.
It could be, yeah, so Rob's just said it could be that you've done it right. So if you do the command above Rob's message where he said, Vicky said, do git config user.name, it will show you your name if it's gone, if it's worked. So it might be that it's worked and you've not.
Oh, okay, so I don't need to put like my name into it. Wait,
Oh, I see. So you've done it without your name? Oh, you mean to check it?
oh, I see. Yeah, it's doing now.
Amazing.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool, no worries. Thank you, Vicky and Rob. Okay, Rosa, I get object not found. Command not found. Are you using a Windows machine? In Visual Studio. And then could you copy and paste the command that you put in to get that response? Okay, Windows needs Git Bash installed. Okay, so yeah, you might need to do, there's a link here on the Git website about installing it. And there's, yeah, Mary, thank you. So you might need to do that in order to get it.
Hi, Jessica, can I just ask, do you know when you, obviously, because I've already added my details and everything. However, I didn't add the, I added global, but I didn't put like username and. Oh, I was at question marks. I didn't know this would be so complicated.
So
this is
you
how yeah, I just have to carry on, but no, do carry on. I don't.
okay. I'm happy to, well, should have time for a break shortly. So I'm happy to, if you want to stay while we have the break and we can try and figure it out together.
Hi, can I add something? I don't know if you can
Yeah.
hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, just a quick, because I don't know, depending on if you've ever touched the bash commands and all that stuff. I remember that when I started this, it was, you have to be extremely careful with what you type. Like if it's dash dash, it's not dash, it's dash dash. And if it is in quotations, it must be in quotations. Make sure that you check out the spaces and you don't forget. It's like you have to be extremely picky when you type these things, because otherwise it will give you an error or tell you check for help or something. Like, you want help if you mess something up. So that's something I wanted to point out, because we have to be extremely like git space config space, all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. 100%. Thank you for making that point. It's yeah.
Sorry.
Hopefully it will just be, yeah, like a character out of place, but you're right. It has to, with these commands, you do have to get it like bang on. When you have been using the terminal for a little while, you can start to customize the commands and make shortcuts and all those things, and that becomes a lifesaver, because yeah, it's so picky with how you input things. Yeah, exactly. Aliases. Thank you. Okay. Cool. So we'll move on for now, but again, in about 10 minutes, we'll have a break, and I'm happy to have a go at trying to figure out these configs with people. But you can still follow along, because we're just going to be covering the concepts. And like I said before, we will also be initializing a repository in a different way afterwards too. So if you can try to move with your terminal inside the folder that we created, inside the codebar folder, and this is the bit where you do not want to do git init just anywhere in your computer, because that is essentially you initializing a repository right there, and that will track everything in that folder. And again, if you want to delete that, then you can, and that will undo that. But try to move around the terminal to get to your codebar folder. So if you're inside an IDE like Visual Studio or PyCharm, you should just be able to open that folder and from the program, and then open a terminal, and you should be in there. You can do an ls or pwd, which is print working directory, and see where you are in your terminal if you want to double check where you are. Yeah, Git cheat sheets. We will be talking about a Git cheat sheet, so don't stress. Yeah, that's a great idea, Chrome. So once you're in that folder and you're sure you're in that folder, you can do a git init. And so what you're doing in that part is you are initializing a repository. You're telling Git to start tracking with the date, with the time, with how you're moving files, like a lot of information about anything that happens within that folder. Cool. And then if we want to see if Git is tracking changes, then your best friend will be Git status. And hopefully Git should tell you that there are some changes that you want to add. Oh, what was your error, Rob? Global.
I'm surprised. It says, this is a hint. It's like, do you want to do this? Because it says something about the master, as the name is initial branch. I don't know. It's the first time I see this message. It's a very long hint. Git branch. Okay. Let me just.
Yes. So
First time I see this.
Yeah, because it's initializing an empty Git repository. It will be asking you what you want to call it, essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, lots of it's basically, so there used to be, well, you can have different options for what you want to call your main branch, and it used to be traditionally that it was master and that was the default name, but now I think, yeah, there's an option. You can call it whatever you want. So yeah, master or subject to change. So you can call it, you can do the git config -- global, so the init.default branch, and then put your name. So if I'll copy it and put it in here. Sorry, not your name, the name of the main branch, which a good name for main is just mains. But this is, yeah, so master was the default, but I think because they're trying to move away from like less biased language, I believe. Yeah, so from October 2020 onwards, the default branch of any Git repository is main instead of master. I didn't realize it would still give you the option at this point. Oh, production. Yeah. And you know it's the one that's going to go live, right? It's a good name.
I mean, production, that's what it is. And then there's staging as well. Production sounds scary.
It does, but it's also scary and like in a good way that it might stop you from committing the wrong changes to production.
It is also a protected branch. You know, you can
Okay,
protect on GitHub, so people can't just like merge in freely. But
Great. So hopefully, are we at the stage that that's worked for most people now? If so, we are ready to add the file that we've got inside that codebar folder. And so if we do git add and then the name of that file, then we're staging those changes, and that's us telling the system, I've made some changes, this one, that one, and this is the stuff I want to change. I want to save. And then if you're sure about those changes, if you have loads of changes, and it's not just one file, you can do git add space dot, and that will add everything. But again, might not want to do that because you might not want to commit all of those changes. How's everyone going so far? Yeah, exactly. Rob knows the dangers. There's been so many times I've accidentally pushed up like files I should not have. Oh, you've got an idea folder. So we'll be talking about this in a little bit. Yeah, git ignore, exactly. Got bash, fatal, not in a git directory. Rosa, are you inside your codebar folder, and have you done a git init, and that's the error you get then?
No, I didn't do in it. I'm trying to put my user email in at this point.
Okay.
So
You've got
not in a git directory, but I was in the codebar file.
Yeah, that's a strange one.
Do you know when you say, obviously the git init, do I write git init and then I add the code bar?
No, so if you're inside codebar, so if you do pwd, that stands for print working directory. So if you just do that on its own, pwd, and then enter, that should tell you exactly where you are, where your terminal is in your folders right now. And hopefully you'll be inside your codebar folder. And then once you're sure you're there, you can do the git init. And Rosa, I think we're getting there. I think it might just be, hopefully it's just something slightly wrong with the command that we're using. Because at least we have, yeah, okay. So how to stage all files together and not one by one is just git add space dot. But again, use it with caution. And Jen, you're inside your home folder, so you don't want to do a git init in there. You want to move around so that you can get inside your codebar folder. So if you do ls and enter, that should tell you all the folders that are inside the directory you're in. And then hopefully, I'm not sure what your folder structure is like or where you put the folder, but you can do cd into codebar if it's in there, or if it's like a few layers down, and you can cd into the next one and work your way into it. But yeah, okay, Rosa, we can do that. So what's the other question? Yeah. The pair programmer adding 9,000 files is definitely why you want to be careful where you initialize. So to initialize a Git repository, it's literally just git init. And okay, you got the black coder folder, but you added it in a different folder. If the black coder folder isn't a, have you already used that for? Can you create a codebar folder inside the directory you're in now, Jen? So if you go to home and put one in there. Cool. So if we are now ready to commit our changes, then we should be able to do git commit -m, and that's just telling the -m is to say that you're adding a message with that commit, which should be standard. You should always add commit messages. And then in quotation marks, you want to state the change that you've made. And so in this case, you've added readme.md. Yeah, Rob, ask a question.
Yeah, because when you study online, you see lots of people doing different things, and you go like, yeah, but what is the convention?
Yeah.
I was told, and ever since I've been doing it that way, that I was using infinitives to start the actions of the comments. Like
Yes.
add, I don't remember the explanation. It was more like the to-do list. This is what happens. I don't know. I understand the past, the participle, like that's what's happened, but I don't know about the conventions. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so I have that. There's different conventions in different places, and I know that some organizations will ask you with each commit to essentially write a whole story. But yeah, past tense or imperative, like saying what the commit does. So adds readme.md is also good, or add readme.md. It is preference. It is it will vary from organization to organization. And I think as long as it's clear what it is that's changing, I don't think it matters too much, in my opinion. It doesn't confuse me when it's in a slightly different tense or way, as long as I know, okay, the change Rob's made has been to change that file or add something to that file. But yeah.
In my previous company, we always had to add the Jira ticket number to the commit message, so you knew what ticket you'd been working on. But yeah, it was got a bit more complex if it was like a bigger ticket. Like for small tickets, it worked fine. So there was always like a bit of a pushback, and we, you know, we'd always have debates that was like, we get this logic, but also it doesn't always work.
Yeah, yeah. Or like if you have a project that has like a massive test suite and you're like, this commit fixes the test, but then it breaks another test. So this one fixes the other test.
Yeah,
And this one...
Or the one I see quite a lot is just the message that just says typo. And you're like, that's not useful.
Yeah.
Fix typo.
Yeah. Oh, awesome, Rosa. Yeah, that's great. Hopefully you should be able to move into that repo and do your Git in it. Okay, so for the people that have committed, awesome. Nice one, Lydia. For the people that have committed, again, your best friend Git status, and we should be able to see a different message now. And it should again tell us which branch we're on, which files were modified, which code is staged or not staged, what's ready to be committed. I would like to switch to codebar away from Black Coder. So if you want to move back out of a file, then you need to, yeah, thank you, Ikram. It's cd ... and that takes you back up a level. Promise you navigating around like that does get easier with time. Yeah, change directory, exactly. Oh, and now let's give it a go with a Git push. Before you panic, we should probably see an error. What command wasn't found, Jen? You need the space after CD. Yes, Rob, I'm pushing to the void. Exactly. So you're not connected. You don't have a remote repository to push to. That's the next bit. Awesome. Yeah, no configured push place. So now, and everybody who's not yet been able to do the commands on their terminal or connect to GitHub through their terminal, you can follow along with this part. If you can open your browser and go to your GitHub account, your GitHub profile. Oh, thanks, Moya. Hopefully you can catch up with a recording. So if you go to your page, and you should have a repository section, and you should have a little green button that says new to start a new repository. And the screenshot, because I can relate a lot. I've been a software engineer for 7 years and I will never remember the steps to adding an SSH key to my GitHub profile. I'm so sorry. Things like this, connecting our local repo to a remote one, or just setting up SSH for the first time and working with GitHub. The first time you do something and setting things up is usually not as often as you will be using it all the time. So don't at all feel stressed if it's tricky or you don't remember all of it, because most people still have to follow along with the docs every time they do it. And yeah, SSH in general is a nightmare. We won't be doing that. Cool. So we should have been able to create our new repository. Let me know if we're at this stage now. And don't click create yet if it's not too late. So Jen, can I get it into codebar now? Are you inside the codebar folder? If you do pwd, will it tell you that you're inside codebar?
It only says home. Yeah, I added the PWD, but it only says like home and then /Jennifer.
And then if you do ls, is it just like a whole list of folders?
Yeah, but it doesn't mention what do you call it? It doesn't mention codebar. So because I think when I was doing a bootcamp, I had to like switch, I had to do some changes with my folders with help of a tutor. But I've added the codebar in like in a folder underneath Black Code Her, so it's separate because I don't want to mix what I'm doing now with Black Code Her. That's why I create a new folder, so I didn't attach it to Black Code Her. So I don't know why it's getting complicated for some reason, because
So it's inside the Black Coder folder. Is that what you mean?
no, because so basically it says, for example, the how it's set, it's like this PCA, so they use it, and then it's my name, well, my name and surname. And then there I added a folder, I create a folder called codebar. It's not inside Black Code Her, it's a different folder, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. If you can wait 5 more minutes, then we'll finish this step for connecting this repo, and then I'm happy to give it a go with you screen sharing when people take a break. So I think we're really
Okay.
close now, but it's just trying to find that folder. So we'll give it a go in a second. But if you, in the meantime, if you could open your browser and make a repository on GitHub. Yeah. So hopefully you can create a repo called codebar, and we will want to create it, connect it to the local repository that we've initialized inside our folder. And the settings you'll need for that is make sure you've unticked initializing, adding a README, sorry. And earlier somebody mentioned a git ignore file. So git ignore chooses not to track specific files. And some of these will be files that you won't want to push up and are part of your local setup and your local environment. So what you want to do is make sure that it doesn't really matter for this specific project, but usually you want to make sure you have one as part of your repository. See you later, Ruth. So hopefully now that we've created that, we should have the options to set up the connection, and we'll do it in HTTPS for now, and you should have that link there that will show you how to connect, basically. And if you copy that link, then we can sync our local. So where we tried to push before in our terminal, we can do git remote add origin URL and then put the URL. Yeah, SSH is a long process and it can take a little while. But it is the safer, more secure way to do something. So usually an organization will like enforce that you have it. So Karina, there is no correct setting right now. If you want to add one, it's good practice because that's what you usually do, but it basically stops you from tracking the things you don't need to track, and Git will do that automatically. So once we've added that origin, then we should be able to do the Git branch -m main. And that's just moving us, telling the repository, it's us saying which branch we're in, which is the one that we've created. And then if we do the git push -u origin main after that, You got the old school one. No worries. Oh. Cool, how are we doing? That worked? So we've referenced Origin a lot, and it's just the shorthand name for a remote repository that a project was originally cloned from. So instead of the original repository's URL every time, we can just say Origin and it knows what we're talking about. It's just the link to the place that we're pushing and pulling from. So what we have just done is we've gone through those 3 steps that it takes to save on Git and pushing to GitHub. So these are the 3 stages to it. And it's the adding, which is where we stage, it's the committing, which is the actual saving with the message, and it's the pushing, which is the kind of syncing with the remote version of the repository. So we've got the local version on our computer, and every time we push, we're sending that code to the remote version. So I think this is the good part to stop for a break. So we'll take 5 minutes. We'll come back at 7:08. When we come back, we'll be talking about branching and merge conflicts and all of the hairy stuff that can happen, as well as how to overcome some of those issues that happen when we're sharing repositories. I'm going to set the scene for talking about branching and why we do it. So in the late 90s and early 2000s, Neopets, I don't know if anybody remembers Neopets, but it would be taken down for a few hours every month. And sometimes the reason why it was taken down every month was for maintenance, and sometimes the improvements were invisible, but other times there would be completely new sections to the world map. And it was usually done between 2 and 6 a.m. So I've got a question, which is, why do you think they took the site down for a few hours every month? I know, Charlotte, it's such a throwback. Maintenance, yeah. Updating the repository and updating files. And why do you think they did it at 2 a.m.? Yeah, Chrome. No, yeah, less traffic, no one was online, no one would notice, exactly. Yeah, exactly, hopefully people are sleeping. How long do modern websites go down when they're being updated? Yeah, they don't at all, exactly. And why do you think that's possible? We've kind of had some hints in the chat now. Yeah, good. Well, specifically branching, different branches, exactly. Perfect. So the reason why they don't need to do that anymore is because there's a separate version that everybody's working on, like Kimberly was saying, with having the codebar website on the production branch on a branch called production. It means that you can work in other branches and build a completely new thing, and it doesn't need to change until you merge that into the production branch. So instead of like everybody keeping needing to take everything down to do those changes, you can just keep a copy separately and working in parallel to the one that you're trying to update until you're ready to push all those changes at once. Yeah, it's a game changer, right, Graham? So with this drawing, very beautiful drawing, we don't have enough time to completely finish everything that needs to be done, but it's okay. So what we want to do is collaborate with other people to make sure that we are building something that is as good as it can be. And the things that we can come up with as a group will generally be better than the things that an individual can do alone. So if I were to ask one person to draw everything themselves, we could get something like this. And if I were to ask other people in the class, in the group to do it also, then it might be similar, completed like a very similar drawing with the trees and the chimney. Well, but the point is here that they are slightly different. They're not exactly the same. And so if I were to ask a computer program to merge these two drawings together by combining the best features of both of these projects, what problem could we face? Differences in the merge, overlap, ship windows. Yeah, we would have some pretty bad windows. But exactly, this would be a merge conflict, and it isn't the end of the world. It just means that there are some parts, like there are some bits, like the parts in black that are exactly the same, the bits that are identical, and the bits where there is no overlap, really easy to merge those parts. But as somebody mentioned with the windows and the swing, there might be some conflicts that a computer just can't figure out which bit is the best bit. So a human then has to go line by line, usually the person that's the last to merge in the changes, line by line to figure out which are the bits to keep and which are the bits to get rid of. And so if we then think about how we branch and we have what the reasons are for having separate things and separate places that we're developing things, it means that Kimberly can focus on drawing the house and can go into way more detail, and I can focus on drawing the tree. And in the end, because we've kept our work completely separate, it's really easy for us to end up merging things automatically. And neither of the drawings are in conflict with each other. We both have individual features, and we were in the end able to add more detail because we were able to divide that work. And so that's the beauty of branching, and that's exactly how it works. No, that's exactly how you hope for it to work in an ideal world. So you can imagine that we're using these branches and we have all these different versions. And again, we're referring to this snapshot of changes. And the more people we have collaborating on a project, the more you're going to build, obviously, but also the more opportunity there is for things to get out of sync and for people to possibly step on each other's toes with what they're working on. So the main point of a branch and separating is that when you want to make a new feature or fix a bug, you can create an entirely new version of that repository locally to your computer. And that way, all of your changes are kept on that one branch. Yeah, so a less pretty drawing. This is a representation, a visual representation of what it can look like when you're branching. And this is also similar to things you might see in some user interface versions of GitHub, of Git. So you can see exactly when I create a feature branch, my branch that I have on my computer is now in parallel to the main branch. And as I'm developing it and I've committed and it's changing versions, when I'm finally ready for it to change, I can merge it back into the main branch. And now this is what everybody's pulling from. But now we see that Rob is ready to start a new branch as well. And he's branched from the main branch that I've merged, but then I'm going to start a new branch over this way. We have branched at the same point, so we have the same version, same copy. And as we're making changes, those things can diverge even more. And eventually, what Rob does then ends up becoming the new version of main. And what I do, for some reason, didn't work out. We're able to discontinue development of this branch and it doesn't need to go back in. And so you can think of branching as like creating a lot of flexibility. I'm not losing loads of stuff because if I'm merging often enough into main and the things I'm building are going back into that main version of the repository, there's not too much that can be lost because I'm able to completely spin up a whole new version of the repository every time I want to change, create a new feature and create a new branch. Sorry, not sorry, it's okay, Rob. You're a great developer, so your one got merged, not mine. Yeah, I know, Mary. There can be a lot of issues with branching, but we'll get to the bottom of some of them today, hopefully. So, since all the merge conflicts, if there are any, get resolved most of the time, as long as we're not stepping on each other's toes, that means that hopefully 99% of the time, local repositories update without you ever needing to see an error. So now let's go back into our terminal. Let's go back to our Git and let's create a branch. And if you're inside your IDE, you should, hopefully it'll be easier for you to create these files. But if not, no stress if you're not able and you just want to create text files for now. Like Kimberly's shared a resource for using Bash and using the terminal to do things. Highly recommend you take a look at that. But for now, this is just about getting the concept. So let's make a branch. We'll do git space branch space, and then this is where we're naming our branch. And so we're calling it index HTML page. And once we've created it, we don't automatically switch into it. So we then need to, similar to how you move around with in folders with changing directory, you need to check out into that new branch that you've made. So git checkout, git space checkout space, the name of the branch that you've just created. Tags like branches, do you need to create a branch? So it was just branches. I think it was just different names for the different branches. They were all different branches. And I used to think of branches as parallel universes that can diverge and converge later. Exactly, Nicholas. Okay. Yeah, let me know how you get on. Let me know in the chat if you managed to do that. Agree, Charlotte. It's good to go over it in as many different ways as possible as well, because it's just all what people learn in different ways and you want to consolidate different parts. Rob, good point. So if you just do git branch on its own, then it will tell you how many branches you've got and it tells you which one you're in as well. Again, you can do all kinds of like terminal customization. So mine always tells me where I am, which branch I'm in and stuff like that. Sweet. So hopefully, yeah, as Rob just said, we can do a git branch and that will tell us where we are right now. One step ahead. See you later. Cool. So if we are all in the new folder and we're all on the new branch, then we should be able to create a new file and we'll call it index.html. Again, if you want to do touch here, you can make it like that. So touch index.html. And then once you've done that, your best friend, git status, it should tell you which branch you're on, the status of your repository, if you've modified any files, what stage, what's not. Hopefully it should tell you there's a new file on this branch. If it has, then you can use the git add. And again, we're staging here. So we're telling the system, we're telling Git that I've made some changes to my work and this is what I want to save.
Sorry, Jess, just a quick question. Is it git commit -m or is it just git commit m to send a message?
-m.
Okay, and then you add the quotation and then you write what you wanted to call it. Okay.
Exactly. And then you're telling, yeah, exactly. You're writing that message for either your future self or for your colleagues to tell them exactly what this save has changed.
Yeah, cheers, cool.
And so if we manage to do the git add, our best friend again, we'll do a git status, and we should hopefully see that we have staged our changes. Is they're ready to go, ready to commit, not go just yet. Now the part that I've just put in the chat, we've got committing the changes so that they're ready to merge. Penultimate step in saving. So again, depending on the convention you want to use, adds, added, adding, just saying what the changes are that you've made. Yeah, or feature, yeah. Anyone guess what we're going to do after we commit? It's not push, it's checking the status one last time. Sometimes there can be changes that creep up that you had wanted to add, or some things there that you've committed that maybe you don't want to push. Just if you're ever in doubt, git status, always. Yeah, git log is also a great one. That will show you the log of changes since you've since you've made changes. And then we're ready to push. But if we just do git push on its own, it might come back with an error because we haven't specified yet where we want to push to. And since we switch into that new branch, we'll need to specify that we want to push to the origin. So remember the kind of like source of truth, the remote version of our repository, but specifically we need to specify that branch name that we've just created. So git push origin, index HTML page. There's not appear to be a Git repository. By giving the wrong command here. So maybe, yeah, maybe you've not the index HTML page. Critical error cannot be resolved to branch. So I think you might need to try. Yes, there you go. Thanks, Q. Git push set upstream. Okay, and so if we're able to do that, and we can then check out into our main branch, so git checkout main or git checkout master, and that's switching back to the main version of our branch, the main version of our repository. And we do an ls, or we look at the folder structure, we should see that that file then disappears because it exists only in the branch that we've created, in the new branch that we've created. It doesn't exist in main yet. So if we now want to update our version to the latest version that we've got, tried upstream, try to get in there. Can you try the -u one, Mary? See if that works. And also, yeah, let me know. And so because our main branch is not a protected branch like Kimberly's, so ideally you would have your main branch protected so that you can't just push and pull to it without there being kind of a review process. We can do git pull origin and then specify the name of the branch. And that was basically saying, I'm in the main branch now and I want to pull in all the changes from the index HTML page into the main one. If you do git branch, what do you get, Mary? It could just be a... Yeah, it looks the same, so why can't it be resolved? We'll come back to it in a moment. So just spoke about protecting branches and making sure it hasn't had the... Yeah, so basically what we've just done in pushing the only part, the point that the branch gets added to your remote one is when you do that first push. And so that's why we had to specify the origin and the push upstream or the -u means that we're pushing that branch to exist on the remote repository, which doesn't happen until that point where you do that first push. Oh, neither are working. Okay, we'll take a look at it in a moment. Just a couple more concepts that I'd like to go through. I know, oh, sorry, Mary. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So ideally, if you're able to create branches and you're able to push them up, which Mary will be able to do soon, you will then have the opportunity to create a pull request. And a pull request is like presenting the snapshot of changes that you've made and doing so in a way that allows your colleagues and people you're working with to discuss and review those changes that you've made. So they can make comments specifically to the lines of code saying, it would be nicer to do it this way, this looks great, this might affect this, essentially able to review your work. And you can then continue to do follow-up commits to that branch until it's ready to be merged into main. And so this is a really helpful step to avoid making changes that could take down production. And so if we go back to this example, then we can see that nobody would be able to make the changes to the final version until people from both of the teams working on that specific drawing or project are happy with those changes. And so yeah, it's just a nice way to make sure that it's collaborative at each stage, and you're not able to make changes that would hopefully impact negatively the platform or the build process for other people. Yeah, so that's the end of the part about Git. I wanted to also shout out this great resource by Asia, which is about spicing up your GitHub profile. So as part of your what's available to you on GitHub and you're part of your profile, you can create a repository with the same name as your username. So if you go back to GitHub and create a new repository, and if you make one with your name and this time you tick the add a README file, then whatever you put in the README file will be on your profile overview. So yeah, Asia's example, she's got like links to the things she does and her work, how to reach her. And then you can also add these little like buttons and things, let people know what your technical skills are. And it's a really nice way, instead of having a CV, to have like a summary of your experience and your projects and link to the things you've done on here. So, and yeah, you do that all from GitHub. So you create your repository, and as you can see, it's a special repository, and you make sure it's public and initialize it with a README. And then once you do that, you will have, you can edit it directly from GitHub if you'd like to, rather than doing it from an ID or in your terminal, and make changes to that there. But if you want to continue practicing with GitHub and setting things up yourself, you can also clone it locally. So the steps we did earlier to create a repository, the other way to do it is to create it first in GitHub and then clone from here. So we would create another folder on our local laptops, and instead of initializing a repository in that way, we would just do git clone and then use this as the origin file that we're cloning from. So if there's anybody who hasn't yet managed to connect to a repository, then this might be a nicer way to do it than the other way around that we started with. So creating it in GitHub first and just doing a direct git clone from here. Question, how do you add the social media buttons? I'll share Asia's article, and I'm sure it's in there. Cool. So somebody spoke about this earlier. I think it's super important to create your own cheat sheet. I'm happy to, I'll share this as well so that you've got all of these, but not just with the commands that you use, but also for the concepts that we've covered. Just going over them a few times will make a big difference in how confident you're feeling. Yay, Kimberly has one. That's awesome. And it's a repo. Very nice. 7 years old. Awesome. And yeah, I would just say that the most important thing is to just master the basics. Try not to get too scared with the error messages and the conflicts. Each time you get one and you solve one, it will get a little bit easier. I was also very terrified of this in the beginning, but I can can kind of do it now. I can do it for what I need to do. And I'll also share these resources. So there's the GitHub docs are amazing, really clear and well written. So I just have a look at their like quick start and have a look at play around with the documents that they have, documentation they have. And then also if I ever run into a conflict or I'm struggling with something, ohshitgit.com, yeah, amazing. Basically we'll just have like all the error messages that you could come up with, and it will tell you the steps you need to take to get back to the version you are with. Because version control can be scary in that you can make some changes that you might not want to make. So before you like get yourself into a panic, ohshitgit.com, and you'll figure it out. I know, right, Ross?